Hello, welcome back to Just for Today. I'm Jamal Normie.
Hey, I'm Miranda, the recovering addict.
Today we're going to talk about boundaries. First thing that we got a scripture.
Today's scripture comes from Ephesians 5:15. So be careful to live your life wisely, not foolishly.
All right. That's good advice in general.
Boundaries. So, I'm just realizing like how important boundaries are, especially in recovery when you're like, you're changing your old ways and, starting fresh. You have to like change your environment and this and that. And then during that process, you have to make boundaries with those that, when you're in recovery when you're no longer in the crowd that you used to be with, there's still like family or certain situations where you have to see or be involved with certain people, whether it's, another parent parent of your child, or just family members in general. And that's what I'm dealing with, boundaries.
So triggers is what you're saying? Setting boundaries, things that trigger?
Yeah. So you have to put up boundaries around those things that trigger you. And in the beginning, I put boundaries up like all around me. I wasn't letting nobody in. Because I have to do my healing process. And that's what I did for a good, 2 years, like 2.5 years. Because nobody really understands or understood what I was going through, even though I know people would want to help and they'd want to understand, but I just wasn't ready to let, certain people in my bubble, because there's a lot of healing and understanding that I needed to work on, to realize being around certain people did trigger me. Not trigger me into like saying, oh, I want to go use, triggering my emotions or my anger, my frustrations. Like, in the beginning, I didn't know how to handle all of that.
Well, if you think about it, why use? People use journaling because of an emotional response, generally.
To hide it, to
hide, to
suppress it.
cover, to feel another sort of way about something in general. So
yeah, that's true.
Nobody really.
Yeah, but I guess what I meant though is because I guess at a certain point in my recovery, the craving to use was never on the top. It never got there because I was just dealing with my emotions and I knew I couldn't go there. So I guess, but that's what it is. Like, you use to not have to deal with those emotions. And I had to set boundaries up because I had to learn how to deal with my emotions. I had to learn to, I'm not in control of everything. So if I let certain people in my bubble when I'm not emotionally stable enough to handle certain situations, it's just going to bring me back. Yes, I have to eventually make amends with certain people and open up the boundaries a little bit, because that's part of the healing process. I can't stay in my bubble forever because you're not going to grow if you do that. And so just recently, I took a step forward into allowing certain people in my bubble. I call it as like I'm dipping my toes back in the water. And it's just, it's frustrating and it's like disappointing that I know that I can never let my guard down with certain people who are family, like close to me, like things that these people that I've had like really good memories with and that my kids are growing up with, and knowing that I just can never fully relax because, I can't control certain people or certain environments, at other people's houses. So I don't know. God, it's just...
Yeah. No, you're just talking about some of your frustrations and that are attached to the boundaries. I mean, It's just weird because of one thing. So if we're talking about family, like I've been raised with, my family is, regardless of what happens, like we're all for each other. We don't get mad at each other, like we get frustrated or whatever the case is, and then we move on from it. We don't dwell, we don't hold grudges, because family to me is your support system regardless. This is my first time dealing with everybody has a different perspective on what family is. Like I've heard people say, blah, 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 because there's families that are abusive. You have dads that, beat their children, and then, people want to go home, suicides, all this sort of thing. You hear about stuff, but it's like, I've never dealt with it on a personal level before to know, because at first I was very, you didn't hang out with your family and everything else.
Your perspective on family was
different than
it's going to make you feel better. Yeah. That's what you need. And I thought the way my family communicates and handles situation, like that was the normal. I thought it was normal to argue and just,
But that's just it though, because so when you think about it, generally your family is going to be somewhat like you.
Exactly like me, yeah.
You're in the position that you're in likely because of something you're dealing with.
I think that's why I wanted to suppress my feelings, like I was the youngest out of the family, never had a voice, so I was always like belittled in a way. And I think that also may be bringing out issues between me and you, because I'm always feeling like if somebody tells me I'm wrong or whatever, I guess it takes me back to that time of like me feeling like I don't matter, I don't have a voice, and into that negative thing. I guess it's a key right there.
So many levels to it. It sucks, and it's just, I don't know. You have to set boundaries. You have to set boundaries.
And like healthy boundaries. I think in the beginning when I put boundaries up, I overly did it. So I kept everybody out. The only people that were around me were just my kids. And then I have to be careful not to judge. I have to come to terms of I'm healing, I'm changing, I'm fixing what I can, I'm working on myself, knowing that during that process I see, faults in others. But that's not my place. Like I'm supposed to keep my side of the street cleaned. This is my side of the street. I'm only worried about me and my recovery, Like if your, side of the street's not dirty, then it's like, okay, I can't make you clean up your side of the street, and that's that's what I have to deal with, or that I'm handling with right now. Is that, opening up those boundaries. It's like, like having to bite your tongue a lot of the times, and like knowing like when to speak up on certain situations and when not to, like I can't fight other people's battles, and again, like I can't judge, and that's a big one of my defects is I do judge. Like that's a defect of mine. Like I grew up, I don't know how or what, but just being very judgmental, because I was always worried about being judged, and it's because I'm judging other people. So so slowly I'm trying to learn how to open up those boundaries and accept, like, hey, if that's what they want to do, like I can't change that, but that just means there has to be that fence up right there.
A little psychology. Often people act how they think. So like you have a significant other that cheats or whatever, and then they're always going to be in your business asking you what you're doing.
Who's that? Who are you talking to? Who are you messaging?
Because of the way that their mind works, or people's mind generally, whatever they're acting out of is how they think or how they've acted or whatever the case is. So
like what you see in other people, like if you're in a crowd of like 10 people and what's attracting you, like what bothers you about that person, you need to look within. That's what's bothering you. Or that's what you have to work on within.
And on a separate thing, it's funny that you're saying all this, because she gets mad at me for this, and she's always saying how I put her in a corner and blah blah blah. But I set boundaries too, like in relationships. Like I know what my weaknesses are and everything else, and instead of going there, sometimes I have to take myself out of the equation for a second and think about it. Like she calls it put her in a corner, but for me, it's very easy to break somebody down not now, but prior, it was very easy to break somebody down to the little tiniest bit, right? Like with my mouth, with words or anything like that. Whether it's in a mean way or not a mean way, like I see things where they are, and I can just say it, So instead of going there with you and saying stuff when you act out or act kind of
having issues going on,
then I don't say anything, and I have to let that part go.
I struggle because before, when I would have my issues, I would act out emotionally, screaming and yelling and going all over the place. And through my process in the beginning, I've learned, instead of like burying those feelings or like going from a 0 to a 10, I have to like communicate and talk about it. Now I have to learn to respect when he's like, I have like, even though I'm ready to talk about it, doesn't mean he's ready to talk about it, and that's what I'm like learning right now, is that I have to realize that it's not all about me and on my terms when I'm ready, because okay, I'm not at a 10 right now, I'm at a 6 and I need to talk about it so I don't go crazy. I have to learn patience and understanding that, well, okay, I have to wait until he's ready to talk about it. And sometimes I don't want to wait. I don't, because I don't want to sit in my feelings. And that's what I would do.
Boundaries.
And I don't like your boundaries.
Well, we have list of things we don't like. But works in progress. Everything's working. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. There's no such thing as perfection.
Right.
Everything's perspective.
So at what point or when do you know that it's okay to lift up those boundaries?
Well,
and how do you do it? Like, it's slowly.
I mean, I guess it depends on what the boundary's about. Technically, just like it's forgive but don't forget. I think it's to always have some sort of safeguard to an extent. You can't just let people walk all over you.
Yeah. But
at the same time, you don't have to necessarily react on your boundaries.
I think what I'm having difficulties with is that I guess like I'm learning and growing and understanding certain things, and those that I've had to put up boundaries with, they're still in the same mindset. And having to be okay with that, I guess that's what I have to learn and pray about.
But I'm just going to say it, your family does things that I've never seen people do before. It is nuts to me. And to think that at one point I was dealing with two of you guys at once, it's like, it is weird because your mom seems like she has like common sense.
But I sit here and I say, like years ago when I was in my active addiction, like I thought my mom was the crazy one, like I'm like, it's because my mom did this, my mom did, I
mean, but then at the same time, old age can change, so I'm not.
Yeah, she's definitely changing though. Like there's a lot of things now when I'm around her, so I'm like, she's not, like she's not as anxious, or she's not as she was, so like, maybe that's what
my mom now lets these kids get away with all sorts of stuff that she would never have let us get away with. Right. So things change as you get older. But with that being said, also you have kids that are tied to this. It's family, so you have to see these people, and the things that they do, like you can't escape. Like if it's a friend or somebody, you can put a boundary, you can put a distance, but then you have this dichotomy, like, so where parts of your family are doing things, and then you have other parts of your family that's like, oh, but it hurts me, and then you can't separate yourself from it. So, or you can, but it's hard.
The strings that they there's certain strings that they're holding on to that ultimately are like indirect. Like a direct factor of an issue that I'm dealing with. I guess.
So your situation's hard. Like, it's crazy to me.
But it just seems like, 3 years, coming up in 3 years, like, it's just...
But that's the thing. You've never had a wound has to heal. Like, if I cut you in your arm, if you can either, if you put, a Band-Aid on it, you put aloe vera on it, you take care of it, you change your bandages, it'll eventually heal. If I cut you in your arm and I pick at it, I cut at it a little bit, I pull at it, I don't put a Band-Aid on it, it's never going to heal, and it's just going to drag on and on and on.
Perfect. So that's a perfect analogy on what
that's what you're dealing with. Yeah. Like, you can't, there's no way for you to properly address your wound because of your situation. Right.
So I guess I'm just keeping it bandaged up and like wrapped up and not letting nobody pick on it until it heals, and like the other fresh skin grows over it, and so even when they pick, they can't get into it. It's like the scar's going to be there, but it's not going to be opened.
Yeah, well, the thing is though, you can't even bandage it because it's not something you can escape. Like, as much as you want to, I mean, you could, but is it going to make it worse, and things like that? And we're sounding super cryptic to people, I'm sure, but it's just, it's just, it's a bad situation.
It's complicated.
Yeah, so
it sucks.
It does suck.
But I pray. I'm just praying about it. Yeah. I'm praying that it's not just about me, but healing for all those indirectly involved, like for their own self, not for me. I'm not praying for them so that I can move forward and we can all be better. Like, I'm just legitimately praying for them, for like healing and understanding and peace. But boundaries. I'm still learning.
Boundaries and wisdom. That's the best.
I guess that's the thing. Like, you have to have the wisdom of knowing when to put up those boundaries. What type of boundaries, when to let loose on those boundaries, and even boundaries if you want to, change it to switching gears to like the addiction part. I had to put boundaries. I had to put boundaries on like where I drive around. Like, I couldn't drive around certain areas. It would trigger memories, although like now, like, those memories aren't so strong. But like in the beginning, I knew I couldn't drive over there.
Even me, like, I'm not that, like, so now we're living on a side of town where I used to live, where like my kind of stomping grounds age, with a lot of friends and partying and things like that, and then driving around places and it's like, oh, I remember, then your mind goes back to things that are going on at those times, and it's like, oh, I miss that, and then you miss people, and you miss partying or whatever the case is. So if that was like times 20, 30, 40, 50, like that would be hard. So like, so again, like, I just had to put those boundaries up temporarily, because again, you don't want to stay in a boundary if like, you can't just stay in your neighborhood and never go out, like there's healthy boundaries and non-healthy boundaries. It's good to decipher, again, wisdom and not foolishness, decipher what's a grudge and then a boundary. Like, there's a difference, if you're
and mine's a fine line too. I'm still dealing with like, knowing the difference between a grudge and just keeping a boundary,
boundary to protect yourself. A grudge is, when you have anger and feelings towards X, Y, and Z. So, but
complicated.
Very complicated. All right, well, that's all the time we have for Just for today. Leave us a comment below. How do you feel about this? Do you have issues with boundaries? Do you have some set that you're starting to realize are not boundaries, or to you? I honestly, I wonder how often family, like, it's funny how family is just either the best thing to some people or the worst thing to some people. At any rate, leave us a comment below. Let's have a discussion about that. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, but most importantly, remember to keep coming back.
Stay clean.
Bye.
Bye. like, I'm not ready, you know? Like now all of a sudden, like you give me an attitude, ignore me totally like 3 weeks ago. Haven't had a conversation since then, and now everybody wants to be all lovey-dovey. I'm struggling with it, because it's like, yeah, I want that happiness and everything, but it's like fake right now. There's been no communication, no acknowledging, you know, like I haven't done my part in, you know, my wrongs. Just go without a hat. Testing. That's me not moving forward. That's me still, you know, having a grudge and keeping my boundaries with them versus like us all sitting down having a conversation and talking. Like I have to respect that. I'm not happy about it, but it's like just keeping them in there. I have to keep them at a distance. Like me stepping my toes back into the water just over the last 2 months made me realize like those boundaries are good for me. Alright, let's go.
There's nothing wrong with your hair. It looks kind of nice.
I'll touch it.
Wisdom's good. I'm just gonna leave it at that instead of going way into that. I'm just gonna leave it at that instead of going way into that. What wisdom is. So boundaries. How deep do you want to go into that? Like, are we just skimming the surface type of thing? Are we like talking about it, or just as a here's a scenario type of thing? Because I never want to offend or anything, or are you free to feel like you're offending?
Keep it like right there, not on top of the surface. No names.
I was gonna say it's fine.
Can't see.
It's fine. Do you have anything else? It's like, you're like white and red.